Good evening, one and all. Welcome to the Cultural Commission meeting of March the 15th. I am the chair, and I have a few things to say. Notice to the public, members of the public who wish to view the meeting may watch it on television. Do we have any persons who have signed up to see this on a screen? Am I hearing from Todd or Nancy? No one is asked?
There's no call-in or
Okay.
WebEx.
Okay, the public may provide public comment in advance by a written submission to the following email, and it's on your agenda right in front of you. So the first thing, we're going to have a roll call, please.
Chairperson Dineo.
Then here,
Vice Chair Aboud. Here. Commissioner Leyva. Commissioner Clemens. Commissioner Scott. Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Mowers. Here. Commissioner Drysdale. Here. A quorum is present.
thank you. We have a quorum, and now to say that the public is invited at this time to comment in advance on any topic that is relevant to within the authority of the Carson City Cultural Commission. No action may be taken, however, on a matter raised under public comment unless the item has been specifically included on the agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Any comments from anyone? Sharon? And please state your name as you ask comments for the record.
Hi, thank you. Sharon Ross, Capital City Arts Initiative. I'd like to introduce our new exhibition, Watercolor Stories by Colleen Reynolds, who lives here in Carson City. We're delighted with the show, and we hope you enjoy it. Colleen, the reception for the artist is Wednesday, so you can come back to this room, Wednesday, March 23rd from 5 to 6:30, and we'll do an artist introduction at 5:30 so she can talk about her work. So we hope you can join us. And to the two new board members, I would love to be able to have their mailing addresses and emails to include on CCAI's stuff. So I don't know if you can write that down, and I'll get it from you at the end of the meeting. I'd really appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy the show. We have two views by Robert Ibarra and Cesar Pedra over at the courthouse, and that's up to the end of May. And Phyllis Schaefer's figure studies are at the college, Bristlecone Gallery. They are beautiful demonstration drawings that she did during decades of teaching life drawing, and those are all for sale. And the high school show. The high school show is coming down on the 23rd. It's photo finished. And then the group show by 4 high schools is going up right after that. And we're not doing it receptions for those, but we're in this trying to figure it out. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Well, I do the high school show. Is this the one where you make an award?
Yeah, yes. We have a scholarship and privately funded, and we will award that. They're delivering the work next week. So we haven't seen it yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Keep you posted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 3 is possible action, approval of the, Ms. Paulson?
Yes, I was going to actually officially introduce our new commission members. And the first one is Bethany Drysdale. And she could probably tell a little bit about herself, but it looks like she spent 15 years with the Nevada Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. And then we have Susan Mowers, and she's currently the art director for Travel Nevada, Nevada's Division of Tourism. So I'd like to welcome the new commission members.
Welcome to you both. We're very pleased to have you and look forward to working with you with an exciting year ahead of us. Approval of the minutes is our next item. Any comments?
I move to approve the minutes for December 13th, 2021 as published.
Second.
Now, any comments? Can we call the roll, please, on the motion?
Okay, motion made by Vice Chair Aboud with a second made by Member Jones. Chairperson Dineo.
Aye.
Vice Chair Aboud. Commissioner Scott. Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Mowers. Commissioner Drysdale. Minutes are approved.
Thank you. Item number 4 is also possible action, adoption of this agenda. Does anybody want to make any changes, additions, deletion, anything? Hearing none, we will move on. The agenda is accepted as printed. Agenda items 5A, possible action, discussion, and possible action to elect a chair and a vice chair for the Cultural Commission. That's Ms. Nancy, our city manager.
Yes, so I think we would just entertain a motion on who you would like to select as the chair, and then we'll do the vice chair.
I move to select, or to appoint Barb Dineo as the chair.
Do you need a second? Okay. And I would like a motion to have Sierra Scott as the vice chair. Okay. So can we just have a hand vote, or do we have to do it for the record one at a time? Okay,
You don't have to have a hand vote, sorry, you don't have to do it for the record each time. You can
Okay,
just, you
great.
can just call for a vote.
okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none? We're in the barrel again, Sierra. Okay. And item 5B for discussion only is a presentation regarding an update on the arts and culture program activities since the last CCC Commission meeting held in December 21. So Deborah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
And I'm still waiting for technical assistance to have our PowerPoint displayed on your screens.
Well, if there's anything that you'd like to share with us, and for the record, please state your name.
Deborah Soul, for the record.
Oh, you have to turn these on. And they say technology is a time saver. Really?
To work with this, so you'll have to take that off of there for a moment. And this should-
There you go.
Something is supposed to come up to tell you to connect to it. Is there anything down here that looks unusual?
Looks unusual.
Usually comes up like over here.
I'm not used to it, honestly.
Okay, here.
Yeah, that arrow.
Click on the arrow up.
It might be the USB actually. No, that's. See.
Click share, yes. Don't eject, no. How do we find the click share on this? Let's go over, let's try that. Where's,
If
there,
nothing
didn't
else,
see
you
it.
can print the materials,
Yeah,
as long as they're in the agenda.
I have
materials.
another way that I can try to do it. This might be causing a problem because that is not working. And that could be taking it, trying to do something different with it.
Oh, is that from, okay.
Click share doesn't come up there. I tried to get them to teach me
What
to do this.
happens over there if you click on that now?
It recognizes that that is there.
Open devices? Click share.
That might be a good idea. Because we're either gonna get this going or I'm gonna have to find a cable long enough to reach over there.
Okay.
That's not gonna get it started. The cable, this presentation.
Excuse me,
so she
Madam
wasn't
Chair.
talking when I got here.
Danielle
I
Howard,
saw
Public
you.
Meetings Clerk for the
Was it
record.
me trying to get
If you'd
it
like,
fixed
we
and
can
put it
recess the meeting
I
while
can
we
just
figure out
do
the
a
technical
verbal.
difficulties.
Oh,
I don't.
I'm going to ask Todd, should we move on to another item if we're waiting, or should we
Need to see
recess
if
the
I can
meeting?
find a longer cable.
or I'll just do a verbal.
That is entirely up to the chair. You can move on to a different item if that would be, if there's a different item that we can move on to.
Nancy?
Or you can recess the meeting.
Okay, I thank you. Deborah has stated she's going to go right ahead and make the presentation without.
Okay.
He's going to make it work.
Chair, I was going to have a section under this item, so I can go ahead and go
Sure.
first prior to
Please.
Deborah. So,
For the record,
for the record, Nancy Paulson, Carson City Manager. Oh, it's working. But I will just give, mine's just a brief little update from, so we had a board retreat on February 25th. And one of the topics at the board retreat, Board of Supervisors, was the Arts and Culture Program. So we wanted to bring that topic to the board retreat because staff has had several meetings with the CTA, the Cultural Commission, Board of Supervisors, and there's just been a number of ideas that have been tossed around regarding the future, the direction of the Arts and Culture Program. So this allowed us to get all of the board members in one room at the same time. And we also had some representatives from CTA there and the Cultural Commission. So that allowed us to make some important decisions that would clear the path to do some actual exciting things in arts and culture for the future. So after researching the duties and the authority of the Cultural Commission, the city, and the CTA regarding the Arts and Culture Program, and looking further into the NRS pertaining to county fair and recreation boards, the DA's office, I won't name names, has determined that the CTA doesn't have the inherent authority to oversee an arts and culture program. So the question was, how do we address this with the arts and culture manager position and also the 1% transient lodging tax being under the purview of the CTA? So we provided the board with a few different options. One of the options was to modify an agreement we have with the city has with the CTA, and to allow Deborah, the Arts and Culture Program Manager, to perform both city and CTA functions in accordance with the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan, which hopefully we will approve tonight. Or the other option was to create a city-funded Arts and Culture Division under the Parks and Recreation Department to implement the city responsibilities as they are defined in the proposed strategic plan. So the Board of Supervisors chose to go with option 2, and the position and additional funding for programming is being added to the city's fiscal year 23 budget. That has not been finalized by the board yet. That won't happen until April, but we've been given direction to go ahead and include those in the budget. So the board also discussed the Cultural Commission and directed that the city should retain the Cultural Commission, but look into redefining its functions to identify the Cultural Commission's roles and responsibilities in implementing the strategic plan. And so that leads us into many of the items that are on today's agenda. And so as I said earlier, I feel like we've come full circle because now we're back to having a city department. And I think some of you have met Dan Arp, who is Recreation Superintendent. Yep. So he would be over this position over at the Parks and Recreation Department. So,
Okay.
And with that, if you have any questions, or we'll let Deborah move on with her presentation.
well, I would think it might be helpful if we hear the presentation, which will, just sort of funnel right into what we've just heard from you. And I'm noticing there's 3 possible action items. So I'd like to sort of get it all together so we know what we're doing. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Deborah?
Deborah Soul here for the record. So there are a number of activities that I have been engaged in since we last spoke in December in addition to completing the work on the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan and doing some preliminary work on policy, there's a number of projects that have been in the works. One is the Cultural Mapping Project, which has been initiated to accompany the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan. And the cultural mapping function will offer online layers of a map that identify all Carson City arts and cultural assets, and it will be interactive. So I've been in the stages of developing the database for that cultural mapping. It's a slow process because there's literally hundreds of entries and 20 columns of information that go with all those hundreds of items. But it includes arts and culture organizations, arts and culture facilities, heritage sites, heritage properties, creative economy businesses in Carson City, public art, and arts and cultural event locations. So I would say it's probably 80% of the way there now, and I'll keep plugging along at that. So it should be complete probably by about the same time that the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan is looked at. I've also completed the first draft of the Carson City Public Art Policy, and it's been submitted to the city for input regarding some coordinated input on implementing it across various city departments. We have put together an arts and culture events calendar for 2022. It's a 12-page glossy calendar that's been prepared in consultation with local arts and culture organizations. 5,000 copies have been printed and will be distributed to organizations and also to our hotels and lodging properties so that residents and visitors will be more aware of the wide range of arts and culture events and activities that are taking place here, and will be able to plan their outings and trips accordingly. Mark Twain Days. Given the significance of Carson City in Mark Twain's history, I put forward a suggestion that perhaps we should consider introducing a cultural festival to celebrate his life and adventures here. And this has immediately generated a tremendous amount of interest. The 3-day festival will take place from April 21st to April 23rd of next year during shoulder season so that there is little in the way of conflicting events and when our lodging properties will have capacity for visitors. A planning committee has been established, and the whole Mark Twain Days Festival is being planned as a fun celebration of his adventures here in Carson City. And we keep coming back in the planning committee to one of his most famous lines, "Never let the truth get in the way of a good story." And I think that sort of sets the tone of what we hope this will be like. So there's a wide range of activities being planned, ranging from a Mark Twain lookalike runway competition to special activities at the former Clemens home. Literary and musical performances are being planned, vendors, and many other Mark Twain appropriate ideas are being explored for that. There's also intended to be some community activities, potentially with the local schools, leading up to the celebrations. So the community will be directly involved as well. The 3-day festival will be focused in the downtown area so that food and beverages will be available from our local businesses, who hopefully will come on board with Mark Twain's special menus and activities. And it's anticipated that this will be a fabulous addition to Carson City's annual events that will attract out-of-town visitors, benefit our local businesses, involve the community, and present the opportunity for our local arts and culture organizations to be directly involved. There's another project that's in the works. It's called Art on the Trails, and it has an environmental art component. It's a new outdoor art experience that's being planned for this year that reflects Carson City's great reputation for outdoor recreation, for its hiking and scenic beauty. So art stations will be situated along selected trails that will provide the opportunity for visitors and residents to enjoy a range of outdoor arts activities, try their hand at plein air outdoor painting, learn about environmental art. Gourd art demonstrations are also going to be offered. And then to end of the day with some musical performance over dinner at Silver Saddle Ranch. So I think it's going to be an interesting experience. And it's been interesting. The environmental art component has taken on a little bit of a life of its own. I was actually asked to create a demonstration piece to illustrate this art form, which uses only natural materials and does not impose itself on the environment. It is meant to blend with the environment and to encourage you to look at more closely at the elements and the colors and the shapes in the natural environment by placing pieces that are intended to be temporary. They degrade, they disappear, sometimes slowly through the wind or natural forces, sometimes quickly. If environmental art such as this is created on a beach, the waves will wash in and it will disappear. So it's very much temporary art, but it's just an interesting way of, as I said, introducing art into the Carson City context.
It's wonderful.
There's also a mural project that has emerged with the Mercury Cleaners project. It's a demolition project about to commence on Curry Street, but it's expected to take some time, 2 to 4 years potentially, because there's remediation that has to happen at the site. But in order to minimize the visual impact on Curry Street, it's being proposed that a mural be installed to screen the site. And initially, it's going to be just a wire fence, a mesh fence with a banner that has photographic views of Carson City. That's just in the initial stages while they have to move equipment in and out of the site. But then they're going to erect a more permanent wood fence, and we're going to, I've proposed, create movable panels that will be displayed there that are going to be the first art weeks for a more permanent set of art installations in the downtown area that depict the story, the history of Carson City. So eventually that first mural will be moved to another location in the downtown and will be one of that series of mural panels. And the nice thing about this project is that there's dollars available by the people who are working on the remediation project. So it doesn't have to come out of the city's budget for the first mural, which is even nicer. And that's my summary of activities over the past few weeks and months. That's it.
Any comments?
Absolutely awesome. Every single activity I commend you for. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
A question that I have, are there dates for these activities that we can get published? For instance, the service clubs in town need to know about these things that are coming because I would think you'd want their participation.
Well, the Mark
Mark
Twain,
Twain set.
that one, the dates are set, and we're working with the DBA on that. So there will be direct involvement with the downtown businesses. The other activities that we're looking at, the Art on the Trail, the dates are still tentative. We're looking at potentially the first weekend in June and a weekend in September, trying to avoid high temperature season because people will be out of doors.
That's this year.
That's this year. That's correct.
Wonderful.
I have a question. The arts and culture overlay on the map or the mapping project, you're already 80% done, so forgive me, but the Sierra Nevada geotourism map has a lot of that information on it. It was a project, I don't even know, 7, 8 years ago to put arts and culture locations, things like that on a map. And it's a very interactive map. It was a National Geographic initiative. A lot of that work is done, so I don't know if that would help in the last 20% of your project.
Does it cover in Carson City detail?
It does, and it was crowdsourced, so it was people who volunteered. There was actually a big group of people all around the Sierra Nevada region that would get together and plug in their locations in their own town. So there was a big Carson
Okay.
City component
So
to
it's
that.
called Sierra Nevada.
The Sierra Nevada Geotourism Map.
I will look it up, and it could be helpful to ensure I haven't missed anything. My map may include additional categories, I'm not sure. Really, the cultural mapping component is sort of a standard when you create a cultural master plan or a cultural strategic plan. It is a way of visually locating your assets on the map, and it really lets you know what you've got to start to work with when you're implementing the plan. But thank you, I will check that.
Thank you, Bethany. That was very helpful. When we make, for the new folks and reminders to all of we older ones, as you speak, please, for the record, state your name because they have to be able to have your name. Okay? All right. Yes, Sierra.
This is Sierra. Is the public art policy at a stage that we could take a look at it yet, or what's the timeline on that?
I think it might be a wee bit premature. When I get a little bit more input on exactly who is playing what role in some aspects of implementation, then I think that it's probably possible to share it. But we need to do a little bit more work.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. And items 5B, 5C, do we need to go over those, or I would think so. And it says for possible action. So I think we're on C at this point.
That's correct, and
We're
I
on
think I might
5C, which I think is you, Nancy. Yes.
I thought I'd pull up the current functions on the screen for everybody. As the technology allows. There we go. How come it's not working?
There you go.
Is this yours? Voila. All right. So this item is just regarding a review and possible update to the Cultural Commission's functions that are currently identified in the Carson City Municipal Code. We've been having discussions regarding the role of the Cultural Commission and how to coordinate and integrate the implementation of the proposed Arts and Culture Strategic Plan with the commission's roles. So what you have up there right now are the current functions that are included in the municipal code, and those have not been updated since around 2008, I think, when it was initially done. So the thought is just I have some proposed changes in the functions, and and then I would take any ideas from the commission. And then if the commission did want to make some changes, then you would make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and then we just have to start the process of changing the municipal code. So I wasn't going to necessarily go over the current functions, but some of the suggestions we came up with were advising the Board of Supervisors on all matters pertaining to the city's arts and culture program, advising the board on grant opportunities and the allocation of public funds in support of the arts, and establishing guidelines for those allocations and evaluating those allocations that are made annually, advising the board on the acquisition and installation of public art, overseeing the establishment of ad hoc public art panels for public art projects, advising the Board of Supervisors on arts and culture strategic plan updates. And on this one, I had oh no, it was the next one. So number 6, identifying and designating, or actually, this one would probably be changed to advising the Board of Supervisors on identifying and designating cultural districts, neighborhoods, and landmarks throughout the city. And then the next one is investigation and eventual establishment of a nonprofit arts council dedicated to promoting the arts through fundraising, seeking grants from government sources, state art agencies and foundations, and providing subgrants to local organizations. So if there's any additions, changes, we want to just stick with the ones we have.
Karen About for the record. I have one addition, and that is, since our funding comes from heads and beds, should we add a number 8, should include promoting cultural tourism? Should that be added? Okay. And then the only other question I had, Nancy, was with regards to number 2, advising the Board of Supervisors on grant opportunities and allocation of public funding. Now, would that come through both the direction of Deborah and Dan? Is that how that's going to work? Or just
I think
defining
Deborah's,
that?
the stuff that Deborah is doing would be separate. This would be grant opportunities that are looked at by this new employee, the
Okay.
new city employee. And then also when you're allocating the redevelopment funds.
Okay.
So that's more, this is geared
Where that
towards
comes in.
the city functions, I guess.
So that just the promotion of cultural tourism, I think, is very important.
And our DA, Mr. Reese, is that okay to add on our side the cultural tourism piece?
To advise the board on cultural tourism?
Yeah,
I think that's okay.
okay.
Excuse me, Deborah Soul here for the record. I'm just wondering about number 7, whether it would be more appropriate at this time to reword that so that it could say investigation and not necessarily eventual establishment, because it may or may not be the best thing to do. Investigation of, and I wouldn't even say nonprofit arts council, I would say investigation of an eventual nonprofit arts organization, because it could take some other shape or form.
This is Sierra. You
Yes.
took the words out of my mouth. I would say local arts agency, because that can be a nonprofit or it can be a function of government, and that really leaves it wide open.
I agree.
And what it looks like this one wants to do is talk about sub-granting to organizations. So an LAA would do that. And I do like taking away eventual establishment, because that's a little more, I think, more of a specific strategic plan goal rather than a general function.
I
Right.
agree.
So what is the investigation of arts
Of a
organization?
local arts agency.
Oh. LAA. Okay.
So Barbara, for the record, can we talk a little bit about the functioning of this person at Parks and Rec and how that fits in? We don't want to talk about that. We're still looking into what you're doing. Okay,
Probably when we talk about the master plan. Yeah, the strategic plan.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
Maybe
you,
on
you
the-
made a comment, so I
Right.
just thought, well, maybe we were including that. Okay.
This is Sierra. I also want to tag into number 7, providing sub-grants to local organizations and artists. So we leave the door open for funding individual artists as well.
Okay.
Bethany?
This right here? Yes. It's in the packet.
For the record, Bethany Drysdale, I don't know if I have a question here, but number 2 and number 7 feel a little redundant of one another, maybe 2 until number 7 is enacted. And I don't know that we need to specify that, but I felt a little hung up on the difference between we'll be advising on grant opportunities and then in 7 establishing an organization to seek grants. So I don't know if there needs to be any clarification there or not.
Well, I think at this point in time, this is Barbara, the CTA, we can go out for grants right now. You know, we can do that as a part of our function. And then down the road, there's a better, finer, more permanent organization. Is that how it came out at that retreat the other day, was
This would be, this is Stan, this would be an interim
intro?
action until,
I think the discussion previously had been to possibly establish an arts council. And I think that's what this was kind of designed to address, was we'd still have the city department, but then to have an arts council, if that's the direction that the Cultural Commission wanted to go in.
This is,
Well, I think for Sierra Arts Agency was the terminology she wanted to use on that, which makes more sense than an arts council, so.
this is Todd Reese, Deputy DA. Just to shed some light on the kind of background of number 7. And Commissioner Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you have more knowledge of this than I do. As I understand it with the NEA, there's multiple ways of getting funding. One is through a government local arts agency. And as I understand it, there is a separate track you can take through a nonprofit local arts agency. And so if, you know, if it's in the interest of the commission and the, you know, arts community here and the city, a nonprofit local arts agency may be able to get funding that may not be available, or maybe in addition to a local arts agency that's a part of the city. So that's where it's coming from.
This is Sierra, and yes, there are sometimes separate opportunities, but as far as the funding that comes to local arts agencies, for example, City of Reno is a local arts agency, and they received about $700,000 through the ARP grant through the NEA, and they're the only local arts agency that got that funding to subgrant in Nevada. And that is almost equal to what the Nevada Arts Council got from the NEA for the entire state, and the City of Reno got that. So that's, you know, that came in through a government entity. So it can go both ways for nonprofits or government entities in that LAA track.
Okay. So just for my own edification, the possible action, do you want a motion at this point in time? Is that what you're seeking?
Yes, it would be to recommend these proposed changes to the Board of Supervisors.
This is Sierra. I would love to table this and possibly come back to it when we know more about the new position, because I feel like there might be some specific things that we're missing. I just feel like I'd love to look through this a little more, and maybe just talk about it more, because it feels like this is a kind of a big, if we're redefining this in the code.
Todd, I did hear the word table, which kind of puts it at rest at this point in time.
You have several options. You can, of course, table this discussion until the next meeting. Another, you can, of course, vote on it and decide one way or the other. If you vote on it and decide one way or the other, that doesn't, you know, preclude you from making another recommendation at a later meeting. One thing to consider is that is the timing of the meetings. Typically, the Cultural Commission has meetings every 3 months, and that would put this in, what is this, March, April, May, June? And, you know, according to my understanding of the timing of everything, the board may be looking to consider this in June. So your other option, of course, would be to, or another option, I should say, would be to vote on this or table it. But you could also, Commissioner Scott, you could also talk with the city manager, or with Deborah, or with the Parks Department separately and provide further input.
you have a comment on that? Because,
I know we don't want to table things. I know we want to make things happen. I yes. Sorry, let me gather my thoughts here. I just didn't know how much input the Cultural Commission would have to the new position or the Parks and Rec. Are we still only talking to Board of Supervisors? So, do you see where I'm going? The structure, kind of the similar with the issue we had with CTA and where we fit with that board and recommendations and advisory capacity and all of that. So I just didn't know where that overlap was with the new position and how that would affect our functions.
Deborah Soul here for the record. My assumption is that there would be a split, that this cultural commission would be working directly with the new position, but that I will also be involved. As you'll see when we get to one of the further items on the agenda, the cultural strategic plan has actually been modified so that it's clearer about which position is addressing which aspect of the strategic plan. And because the Cultural Commission is a key component, as has been discussed in this redefinition of functions in the arts and cultural program, and also in the implementation and any changes to the cultural strategic plan, this commission will be working with both positions. And it's impossible to know what might come to pass with a new position in the future, but I don't think that this is written in stone forever. If there was ever a need to make another modification to it, it would be possible, but at least this puts us on, it gives us a direction and knows essentially what the task of the commission is.
Yeah, this is Sierra. I'm wondering if it might cover it, if in number one, it's advising the Board of Supervisors and any dedicated arts and culture program staff on the implementation of the city's arts and culture program. And that would cover being in an advisory capacity to those positions as well, which again wouldn't preclude obviously you are answering to the CTA board, but at least that would be something in here about that.
So the new staff person under the Parks and Rec Department would be a city employee under, I guess, ultimately under my umbrella, under the Parks and Rec Director. And then what we envisioned was they would then be the liaison to the Cultural Commission. I will have to, I'm wondering with Todd, can they advise the staff person, or does everything need to be advisory to the Board of Supervisors?
That's a good question. It's something I can look into. If it would be acceptable to you, what I could do is I could say that I will look into that question. And the way I would phrase it off the top of my head would be possibly advising the city and the Board of Supervisors on these things. And then that would capture basically anybody that is in the city.
That would work.
But there may be some, there may be a interest on advisory committees that I'm not thinking about right now that may specify that you would advise the Board of Supervisors. So I will look at that issue, and if it would be acceptable to the commission, then we can if it would be consistent with the NRS and acceptable to the commission, we can phrase it as the city and the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, this is Sierra. I want to be clear. I certainly do not want to overstep our bounds or be involved with the staff, beyond what we are doing in advisory capacity. It's just the last year was so tumultuous and a little bit confusing about where we were supposed to be with our advisory capacity between the boards and between the city. And I just wanted to make that really clear moving forward so that we don't have to have the conversation again as we have been the last year.
Any other comments? Stan?
This is Stan, I would prefer we move on and not table. I think we've had too many delays already.
Okay. And I'm kind of the same mind too. Barbara, we've spent, a year and a half trying to get a resolution and a movement forward with extreme frustration, and it's time for this to at least begin to have a footprint where we can move forward. We can always make changes, et cetera. So Stan, is that a recommendation by, is that a motion by you? Okay. All right, all those in favor? Aye. I know for the newer members, you've come at a great time because this is like the new child and we get to do some fun and interesting things. And I think it's exciting and I think we all want to work together to make this work for everybody in Carson City. So 5D, let's move on to 5D. It's another possible action and it's revised, proposed revisions and updates to the text goals, blah, blah. Isn't this sort of redundant? No? Oh, the strategic, now we're on the strategic plan, okay. Okay. Deborah, are you going to walk us through this?
Deborah Stoll, for the record.
Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to just highlight with the Arts and Culture Plan that, first of all, as we've all heard, that it is being retitled as a strategic plan as opposed to a master plan, which I'm perfectly comfortable with. There were a couple of other very minor changes that I have made during this interim period. One of them was to add 2.5 to goal number 2. It occurred to me that this is an activity that has been discussed and brought to my attention by lodging properties since I've been in this role, and that is to arts and culture integration across tourism and lodging businesses, integrating Carson City arts and culture content across local tourism businesses, agencies, and lodging properties to enhance the authentic local visitor experience. And really what that's about is hoteliers and lodging properties have come to me and said, how can we make arts and culture more a part of what we're doing? And so there's been ongoing discussions about introducing gallery space, introducing shows, introducing performances into some of the hotel properties, and looking at ways of effectively working with them to do that. So I just thought it was appropriate that we add that to goal number 2, since it already has been requested. The other major change that's been made to the document is in the implementation section, which is the latter portion of the plan. The column that reads "Who should lead?" We took quite a bit of time and went over all of these activities, trying to identify which staff person would be most appropriate to be involved in any way in implementing that activity. And we've divided it up, identifying city staff or CTA staff. And as you can see, the majority of the activities are actually a collaborative endeavor where both the CTA staff and the city staff will be working together to carry out the implementation of that activity. There are a few that are singular.
May I ask the question, please, at this point? When you use the term city staff, it is my assumption that that is inclusive of the Cultural Commission, yes, having a relationship with that staff person?
Of course,
Okay.
yes.
I don't see the Cultural Commission listed anywhere, so I just
No,
want to know.
but this is who leads.
Who
so,
leads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a major amendment to the plan. But other than that, aside from maybe a couple of small word editing recommendations, the plan is in essentially the same shape and form as it was when you previewed it in the fall.
Can I make just one clarification on 6.3, public art? I think I would like it to, it says that public art, or artwork in public spaces that reflects the city's unique cultural heritage and identity. And I think it should be inclusive of contemporary art to enhance our cityscape and artistic richness of the capital city. Okay. Just so it doesn't exclude it.
I guess that the word identity in our opinion, when it was written, is both historic and contemporary.
I'm just not sure that that's, our intent, and then, 10 years down the road, I know how that works.
So we
Oh.
could put contemporary identity?
No, what I'd say is reflects the city's unique, I would say, artwork in public spaces that reflects the city, to include contemporary art, that reflects the city's unique cultural heritage and identity.
Okay. We can do that.
Okay.
Any other comments? Because it reads well. I think you've captured just about everything that we need to have, and I, for one, hope that we move this forward. It's time. Anybody have any comments? Our newer ladies, you have a different perspective than we have had all this time. So the question to the two of you, what's your initial thought? How does this feel for you in terms of working with arts and public policies and organizations and commissions?
For the record, Bethany Drysdale, this is so comprehensive. There is so much in this. And I think it really does touch on what we have. I appreciate the addition of contemporary art because I think it's very easy to fall back into history as our culture. And it's not just history, it's things happening now. So I'm appreciative of that nuance to it. And I love that we're coming in at a time where there's a definitive plan. You can't go anywhere without having a foundation to move on. So I'm excited about this. I agree. Let's move.
Susan, you want to say anything to this?
Yeah, I was actually going to comment the same. This is Susan Mowers for the record, as far as just the comprehensive, like that it did so much. It covered every part of cultural, but I'm also really glad that for goal 5, the diversity and inclusiveness is really included too, because I don't want us to just be so narrow in our definition of culture that we exclude our more diverse communities in the city. And I think it can be really adding to the richness of the culture. So I'm really excited that that's part of it.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, the chair will entertain future direction, a motion, and acceptance. How do you want to deal with this?
Well, I move to approve the cultural arts and culture strategic plan as presented with the one addition as suggested.
I second.
Now, is there any further discussion, any comments? Anybody in the audience want to make a comment? No? Hearing none? I'm calling for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yay! Yay! We're going to. Now, that's quite wonderful. It's a very different feeling in this room than the last time we met. So I'm really happy to see us moving forward. Possible action 5E. Now, what is this one? Funds. Redevelopment funds. Who's going to speak to this? Nancy? Ms. Paulson? It says you, but.
I think Deborah's going to
Okay.
go over it.
Deborah Soul, for the record. I'm happy to lead this discussion. So we took this opportunity to review the redevelopment special event grant guidelines and really felt that at this time it would be an appropriate time to revise these to make them reflect the current environment, situation, and needs, and certainly reflect the new arts and culture strategic plan. So the new guidelines there's a draft that's been put together that essentially makes 2 or 3 changes. I'm not going to read through the entire guidelines because I'm assuming everybody will have a chance to do that, and the community will have a chance to see that with the documents that have been posted. But the major changes that have been proposed in this revision are, first of all, that the grants would be available not only for arts and cultural events, but also for arts and culture projects. So projects and events that would benefit the redevelopment district and serve to implement the arts and culture strategic plan. And the rationale behind that is that we could make resources available to arts organizations who could then select aspects and activities of the Arts and Culture Master Plan that they wish to be directly involved in helping to implement for their own interests and for the purposes of accomplishing the goals of the master plan. And that way we have an entire community, an entire team of people out there able to help implement this new arts and culture strategic plan instead of assuming that one person or two persons is going to be entirely responsible for it, which would not only be unrealistic, but it would be much less effective. So it really opens up, as I said, resources to the entire community to help to implement that plan. The second aspect that has been revised in the guidelines is that there's a much greater emphasis on new as opposed to repeat applications. So there is still an allowance for grant funding to be available for repeat applications, but the amount is reduced, and that would only be available for a period of 2 years after the first application. So it's intended to provide seed money and support money, but assuming that the events or projects will be successful. They will either be implementing something in the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan, or they will be events that are able to carry on either through other sources of funding or other means of being sustainable. So those are the primary changes proposed in the new guidelines. And I welcome any input or questions that you might have after you've had a chance to review those.
So the 2-year that's a sunset. At the end of that 2 years, that particular project is over. The same organization or group could come up with something new and different. Does then the clock starts running again on that? Okay. All right.
This is Sierra. Yeah, two things. Along the same question that Barb had, especially because I'm hearing that we may have more funding for this grant hopefully in the future. I don't know that we want to have a hard and fast 2-year sunset rule. We already have in here, which I really like. If more application requests are received than funding allows, new events or projects will be prioritized, which I think gives us that. But my concern is just that, who knows what's going to happen down the line. We could deal with another situation we've dealt with in the last year, and arts organizations could take a hit. And these new events are a lot of capacity to build a new event. So I just want to leave the door open for recurring events. If there's a year down the line that there just aren't a lot of new events, and then we still have organizations coming in for recurring events that we could still support, but still keeping this priority on new events.
I have this is Susan Mowers for the record. One thing I wonder, because I think keeping the funds open for new seed money is really good, and I don't know how, as far as like being able to wait it, maybe it's not 2 years, maybe it is a longer period, like we say, like a range, like 2 to 5 years, that shall be, determined when that you put forth your plan. Because my question is how, as far as when we take the grants and we grade them, are these events or projects needing to propose how they will become sustainable after that 2 years or after whatever? Because I know we don't want to get into, my thought is we don't want to get into, unless that is the purpose, like to continually support, but we don't want to tie up money for new things. So I guess it would just be, how would we have the people who apply for grants? Is it that they would be proposing, like as part of their grant application, this is after so many so many years, this is how we will become sustainable? I guess that's my question, is how will we judge that, and what are we requiring?
You want to say, it's on the application now, if you review the application.
Yeah, it's on the application now. That's how it's stated, Karen Aboud for the record. And so they have to discuss, previous history of funding and so on and so forth. That's how that works. It's part of our reading material when we go to
Gotcha. Okay.
judge this.
Stan, for the record, I was on redevelopment for 6 years, a long time ago. And the same problem existed year after year. The same 7 or 8 organizations came, and they got to where they anticipated that they were going to get X amount of dollars, and that's all they worked for outside. There's good and bad. There's some organizations that probably truly, really need what little support we gave them, and others took advantage of us. I think it's time we make a change. And I'm not proposing length or dollar amount, but we have to make a change. We just can't continue and have any progress made in our arts and cultural program.
I wonder if there's sorry, go ahead, Deborah.
Deborah Soul, for the record, a couple of points that I would make. First of all, we still have a view of events as the major applicant for this grant program. And in fact, what this is trying to do is open it up to any project and any activity that would serve to implement the plan. So for example, it could be projects that skill up or provide training to organizations to improve their capacity to do what they're doing. It could be training for nonprofit boards on nonprofit board management so that we end up with more effective boards. It could be programs that work directly with the artists and the arts community to skill them up in some way. What I'm saying is there's a whole host of objectives and activities in the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan that could be addressed through this funding that are not just events and that would serve to move the sector forward. The other point that I would make is that having a sort of a sunset clause, whether we want to say it's 2 years or 3 years, we should keep in mind that part of what is being proposed through the Cultural Commission and through the structures that we're looking at is that we have set ourselves up that we will be eligible to designate an LAA, a local arts organization in Carson City. And once that's done, within a 3-year period, that local arts agency is available to become a sub-granting agency through federal funds that can be sub-granted down to our cultural organizations for their projects and events and operations, which is what we've really been doing with the redevelopment funds. So what I'm saying is that there will be other funding pools available over a 3-year period that can take up that need across the arts community.
My other, sorry, Susan Mowers for the record. My other recommendation with that is maybe there's some sort of extension program or whatnot that it could be like, if you do need to kind of, we have the same, issue with, there's some, with Travel Nevada, there's some communities that they really do need the continual funding to keep it going. But then there's other ones, like Stan said, that it's like, they're just like, well, we're going to get the grant money. So perhaps there is some way to qualify, especially for opening it up to individual artists. I would think on the individual artist side, it might be harder to be a profitable thing versus a big event, right? That's going to be selling tickets and things like that. So that's just another option is perhaps there's something in there, like if you require funding beyond the 2 years, explain why and how long you're expecting to do it. That could be another option.
Karen?
As well, and I think it's along where you were going, Susan. Funding individual artists benefiting cultural district development. Since that's where we're headed, should we be stating that? Because that should be something, I think, that's included. So that's the intention, because a lot of these cultural districts lie within the redevelopment area.
Deborah Soul for the record, that is actually in the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan. So if there was ever a proposal for a project or an activity that would benefit and enable that to happen in terms of a cultural district, that would definitely be eligible under this funding.
Okay.
So individuals can apply for this funding?
It would probably not be individuals.
No.
I think it would be
just wanna clarify.
organizations working with
Organizations.
artists.
With
That makes
individuals.
Who would then benefit.
That makes
And
sense.
this is not in any way intended to negate the need of many arts and culture organizations for continuous funding. There, as you say, there are always going to be some that need help, and some situations, such as what we've just lived through, that make that even more pertinent and important. We're not trying to eliminate that or not address that need. I guess all I'm saying is that we've tried to create a system moving forward where there will be multiple sources of funding, and where we're not trying to create a situation where there are no options. But if we open the redevelopment grants to projects that go beyond just events, and if we focus on new, and as you say, whether we put a sunset clause in there or not, I think that's really the intention, to know that we can start funding a wider variety of projects for a limited period of time because they're intended to be successful. And we can also ensure through the structures that are available to us through this new cultural structure that we've created, that we will have that funding that we can sub-grant down to organizations in the future, because we know that there's that ongoing need.
This is Sierra. So my comments were not really because I think we need to continually support organizations. That is not all. That's operating support funding, and I think that's
that's-
a very different conversation. But from the Nevada Arts Council perspective, I have to say, the project grants that we've had coming in from 3 years ago to now, it is really difficult to get people to apply. We have so much funding that we can't actually get out the door, and putting more stipulations on it is just tricky. And I'm just, I have more of a global perspective because I've seen this, and it's hard. I'm trying to project out, say we get additional funding for this grant. I don't know that we'll get 10 new projects applying every year.
I think it's how, is this Barbara? I think it's how it is approached through messaging, communication, in the press. I think one of the best kept secrets in Carson is that there was this money available in the past. And there was a certain cadre of folks who knew, and so on and so on. But if you went out and talked, they say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know where this came from. This is an opportunity, I think, that we have with double the funds to really encourage and seek artists, organizations who will come forward with an idea for a grant and so on. That's, I think, where we're going to be pretty critical as a group, that we need to get the message out there and see how we can start pulling folks together. And I want to remind people, we're talking 50,000. I know we should be very grateful for that, but we could have a lot of requests. It could be for big money. So I think we have to be careful in terms of the directions we go in. If you look at the application, there are certain functions within those applications that these folks who get the funding must perform and must report back after their event or whatever they've done. And, where have they gotten funding from? Have they gone out for grants? The whole purpose of this was to get folks to be seen out there, to know that they can have an audience and to work towards it, and that they had upon them the duty to grow their own organization. They cannot be coming here all the time for funding, or, you say all the time, but these have been pretty small. I'm seeing us down the road with bigger events, bigger happenings going on here. So I think, let's look at the applications, and when they're graded, when they're looked at, that's going to be the crux. But I think it's an onus upon all of us in this room. We need to get the message out there that this is available. I know we put it on the city website, but how many Carson City people go to the city website? So whether there's an article that is done, whether it's on Carson Now, however we do it, we need to get the information out there.
Yeah, fair. This is Sierra for the record. Fair enough. I'm curious to see if we make this big change, what it looks like. I think that's the best we can do is just see what comes down the road. But I just want to put out in the world that, you know, that's my concern. And right now, like I said, we put a lot of stipulations on our grants, and I am constantly working to broaden them to make it more accessible to more folks. And hopefully that won't be a problem here. I mean, I'd love if we got 10 new events every year. That'd be amazing. But maybe it'll be a if you build it, they will come situation. Before I relinquish the mic, my second question is really about the criteria. And I think my concern is if we have these two different tracks, the more event-specific track and then this kind of other project track, as I'll call it, is that the criteria is really separate for those things. And I don't think that that's comparing apples to apples with what we're looking at here, especially, you know, even in artistic merit, if applicable. How does that work with a scoring rubric? So that's just nitty gritty, but, you know.
Deborah Soul, for the record, I actually agree with that we do need to be aware of that scoring rubric. I mean, the reason I put if applicable in is because obviously with a project-based application, there may not be artistic merit. There could be educational merit.
I think they might have to have two separate criterias for each track.
Okay. And the other point that I was going to make is that the grant amount on the very front page where it says up to 10,000 for new emerging arts and culture projects or events, it should just stop there because the text was left in from the previous grant guidelines that really isn't relevant if we're moving the scope of the grants to both projects and events.
Okay.
And if it is something that's Sierra for the record, that's something that more along the lines of, you know, technical board management, that's not really having the potential to become an annual or recurring event.
No,
If it's a
so
one-off,
that needs to
so,
come off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
So I
is
guess-
Bethany for the record. I don't love sunset clauses because there's always a worthy exception. There's always something that needs to be funded longer. But I wonder if in that scoring rubric, maybe there's a negative quarter point for every year that an event keeps getting funded. And so they're still eligible, but they're going to have to work really hard to make up those points elsewhere and really show how they are a bigger benefit than maybe a brand new event. Really have to compete for that money.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's leaving the door open, but again, it comes back to the scoring rubric, and then it's up to the panel.
Right. Right.
Would you be comfortable with, Deborah Soul here, would you be comfortable with us wording that appropriately? So it would be community impact, artistic merit, repeat applications, and it would be 0 to -5 points.
Yeah, I don't know how to sketch that out, if it would be, you know, a negative full point or maybe a quarter point per year that it goes out or per repeat application. That might be somebody with not an English degree like I have, but somebody to figure out that math. But there's got to be a way to do that.
It could be as simple as, if this is a first-year repeat, it's -1. If this is a second-year repeat, it's -2. If this is a third-year repeat, it's -3.
Exactly.
Deborah, it could just be an asterisk on this application. This will be scored based on.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, with these finer points, that perhaps a small group like Bethany and Sierra could meet with Deborah and just this nitty-gritty stuff and just sort of clean it up and bring it back. How do you all feel about that? Okay? Would you all accept that little duty?
Yeah, this is Sierra. My only concern is for timeline, because I know that Deborah wants to get this out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, great.
Yeah, if we can get together and meet, perhaps virtually, if it's during the week, that would be ideal for me. If you need to meet in person, I would have to pass the baton.
Yeah. Please do that, and then, because we could spend a lot of time just, you know, the what-ifs and so on and so on. I have a question on page 62, the grant guidelines. Can somebody tell me, is the Stewart property and and the museum and so on, is that part of a redevelopment district? Because it sounds like in order for the grants, you have to be within, well, you do. So they've been granted, we've given money. I thought we gave money 3-4 years ago for some short thing that Mark was asking for. A powwow.
It had to be held at, in a redevelopment facility. And so it was done at.
And it was done at the MAC. Okay. Maybe I wasn't around for that. Okay, then that's fine. That clears that up for me because I thought, I want to find out about
This
that.
is Sierra. To piggyback on that, if we're looking at the project track, event tracks, obviously, the event occurs within one of the redevelopment districts. If it's a project track, what is the criteria there? Does the organization have to be physically located within a redevelopment district?
The thought was that the project would have to in some way benefit the redevelopment
Right.
district, not located, but benefit.
Okay, great.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. Okay. Fine. Well, here we are. Any more questions or comments? Does anyone want to make a motion to accept
Okay.
these guidelines?
Move to approve the draft proposed for the redevelopment arts and culture development grant guidelines with the suggestions provided and necessary input to fine-tune wording.
Is there a second?
I second.
Does anybody have any questions on that particular motion, or shall we call?
I
for a
do.
vote? You do. Todd does. Okay.
This is Todd Reese, Deputy DA. My question is that I'm not 100% sure what necessary input it is, if that's what you said. So,
Yeah,
okay,
just fine tune.
okay. If you could, instead of specifically naming those two folks, if you could just have, if you could just leave it as assigned to Deborah to fine tune everything, then she can go do that without worrying about whether we're establishing a subcommittee.
Okay.
Okay, I will revise my motion. I move to approve the redevelopment grant guidelines, the draft proposal as presented, and with Deborah's input on just fine tuning what need be on the document.
I will second that again.
Okay. Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? It again passes. Thank you. Deborah, I just want to say you have done an amazing job. And Nancy, you have done an amazing job. And Todd, because this has not been an easy thing to do. It keeps going forward and back, 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. So I think we have finally reached a plateau and a place where we can move forward and function well. Stan?
And I want to congratulate you. That calendar is an invaluable tool. It really is. Thank you for doing that.
Which is wonderful. We're on item number 6 now. It's for discussion only. So, the city manager's arts and culture report.
The only thing I wanted to update you on was I will just try to get the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan to the Board of Supervisors at the April 7th meeting. That's it
Wow.
for,
Would you like us there?
that would be great.
Good. Give us a little notice and we'll be there. Is that it? That's the whole report?
That's the extent of my arts and culture.
Whoa. That's quite wonderful. Thank you. But I just am feeling so good right now in terms of where we are and where we're going. I think it's quite wonderful. So commissioner reports. Anybody have anything that they want to tell and share?
I'm just going to update you on the greenhouse project. We're currently in the planning stages for our plant sale, which is always held the Saturday right before Mother's Day, and this year it will be in person, yay. We do have a Shopify account set up for plants and so forth. However, in person gives us a chance to showcase the facility behind Carson High School. There'll be face painting for kids. There'll be a couple of food trucks, one of which I just have to tout the horn for two of the girls that came from Carson High School who have established their own business, the Boba Babes. And so they will be
What's the
there.
name?
Boba Babes.
Boba Babes?
And so they will be selling boba tea, and we'll also have a taco truck as well, and then as I say, showcasing the site. So and we're going to be doing Mother's Day baskets at different price points for people to give their moms, and so just put that on your calendar.
I would like an update on the baskets for downtown. How's that going?
Sponsored. So
The whole thing?
the whole thing.
Yay.
So we are good on that, and working forward. We're waiting for the poles to get put back up so we can get our signage back up, because they were some of them were taken down with the construction on Curry Street. But our executive director, John Ryder, has worked very hard on that, and they're all sponsored. So thank you to all of you who sponsored those baskets. It's part of beauty of our downtown. So grateful for that.
That's really wonderful. And you have, is it the college kids? Who's putting together the baskets? I think for information.
It's our students are the ones at the high school that help with the planting with plant science, and our greenhouse management kids are all part of that process.
Yeah.
And they're planted as we speak, and they're being nurtured and so on and so forth. So it's all part of the learning process.
And it's wonderful. Any other comments? Anything anybody wants to share? An event, something coming up? No? Okay. Future agenda items. Ooh.
One thing I want, if we can, in terms of furthering the cultural district dialogue, way back when, there was a map of public art locations done. Danny Rotter did that way back. And so within the cultural districts, I think that would be helpful information for us to have, so that in terms of what we're doing, how we're planning, and so on and so forth, that we can include that. And that actually was done is supposedly done, I know, for the 2 of the corridors, and I'm assuming the 3rd. So.
Wonderful. Item number 7, it says time now for members of the public. Should you wish to comment on any subjects or anything we've discussed, anything you want to share? Hearing nothing, I'm going to say this meeting is adjourned. Yay. Oh, when is the next meeting? Do we have it calendared? Ms. Nancy, are we calendared?
Are we going to be bi-monthly, tri-monthly, or what?
Quarterly, aren't we?
Okay.
I have the next meeting is scheduled June 13th.